Today's episode is brought to you by The Broom List. The Broom List is the first and only matchmaking firm dedicated to pairing successful Black singles. All Broom List members are at least 28 years old, make at least $75K annually, are college educated, and most importantly, they are all ready for a long-term relationship or marriage. All Broom List members are meticulously vetted through a series of video interviews, a home tour, as well as a reference check. If you're a Black professional and you're ready to meet the one, go to tanishawood.com and apply for the Broom List. Hello, my lovely listeners. Welcome back to another episode of DRL, where we're talking everything dating, relationships, and love. I'm your host, Tanisha Wood. Oh my God. Do you guys know what today is? It is like my first day back doing an in-person interview, and it's my first time back in New York, and I am absolutely in love with this city. Feels really good to be back, and I really missed it. There's just like a vibe and energy to New York that you get nowhere else. Now, also, we have to like take into account the fact that I have been sitting in the house for almost 2 years. So, but New York is amazing, and I'm so glad to be back. And today I am joined by Jeff Lindor, who is the founder and CEO of the Gentleman's Factory, which is a club of sorts, a workspace, a community for Black men. So I am going to let him introduce himself and tell you guys all about what that is. Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
How are you?
I am doing well. I'm honored to be on the show. And
yes.
The first post-COVID guest.
I know. Wild. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate that.
No, thank you for having me.
So tell us about you.
Founder, CEO, Gentleman's Factory. It's a community of Black men that are just looking to get to the next level. And we realized that we need community to get there. Mm-hmm. So we started in 2017. We opened our first location, and we've grown it to hundreds of members. And now we're looking to scale this all across the city, like all across New York City, all across the country, all across the world. So we're just getting started.
Now, this is how my mind works. So I hear Gentleman's Factory, group for Black men, and I'm like, oh my God, who's single? This is great. That's how my matchmaker mind works. Mm-hmm. But it is specifically a space for men. There mm-hmm. aren't any women that have joined the club or allowed to, as far as I know, right? Why did you decide to do that instead of just a space for Black people overall?
Well, I think that when I looked at the market and when I looked at Black men, there weren't necessarily spaces that spoke specifically to us, to our needs, mm-hmm. to our being, etc. And, we always partner with different women groups, so we're not anti-women, but we just realized that Black men specifically needed spaces for us to thrive and to come together because we're void of those spaces other than barbershops, etc. Right. And it's normally, civic, or fraternal or religious, like those are the spaces where resources are, penetrated through those spaces. And, we said, how do we create a fun, innovative, and empowerment zone that gives opportunity and also connection so that we can get to the next level?
Is there a difference in how men are in a space when there aren't women around?
Of course, because we're focused. Oh, shit. Right? No, let me stop. Yes, right? There's a level of focus that we have. So now there's a high level of authenticity that's in play, right? Because our members range from your entrepreneur to your Stanford grad to your community college grad, like myself, who started out, right? So it's really, again, like this think tank in this, space where you can be and not have a criteria of, all of these different layers, right? So it's a space for us by us.
Now, do y'all talk about women?
Of course not.
When you said all that, I was like, okay, so it seems like it's strictly business up in here. But I mean, are there conversations around women, dating, relationships? And if so, what are those conversations? What do the men in this space talk about, either struggling with or needing help with, or tell me about the male brain when it comes to relationships.
Well, I am going to be writing a book about this someday, right? But here's a precursor. We definitely speak about women, fatherhood, mental health, etc. we have a weekly call called Curated Conversations where we pick a topic and we, have an open dialogue about that topic. And then we used to have that a lot in person, pre-COVID. And I remember this one conversation about effective communication with your spouse, right? And that was a really powerful conversation because just all of the different angles and vantage points that men, have, right? Women are definitely a topic of conversation. But what I would say, though, is that with the culture of Gentleman's Factory, there was never a time, whether it be in person or in or digital, where it was a conversation about bashing women or, patting each other on the back of how many women you slept with and things of that sort, right? So that's not the culture here. So those conversations could be had elsewhere, but just not at Gentleman's Factory digital or in person. But our conversations related to dating and women is always just, how do we figure this out?
Right. And it's interesting that you bring that up because I think that there's this myth among men and women that here's what's being talked about when we're not in the room. And it's raunchy and it's about, who I slept with. And I'm just like, maybe like in college, but I don't feel like those are the conversations that are being had. I really don't. And I think because we have this idea that these conversations are what's, popular when we're not around, that's where you start to hear things like, well, there's just not a lot of good men out there, or, just things that sort of degrade the idea of a good man, particularly a good black man. When these men are talking to me, they could be saying a whole nother thing, but like, I just never get that vibe. Like, I really do think that men want the same things that women want, which is like a good, strong, healthy relationship. The path that each of us may take to get there might be completely different, but like, I do believe men and women at the end of the day want the same things. Every relationship looks different, but I think we're all searching for that commitment and that companionship and like that love and the ability to truly be ourselves. And, men want that too.
Of course. Some of our conversations is, like, when do you get married, right? And then you'll have the financial advisor says, hey, like, you should get married at 25 because at 25, then two incomes together and then you buy a property and, et cetera, right? So that's that angle. And then you have the maturity angle of guys say, hey, you know what? Like 35 or between 35 and 40.
I say nobody should get married before 30. I think that it's tough. How old were you when you got married?
Ooh, so I got married at 25.
Ooh,
right?
That's young.
25.
Now, why did you get married so young? I mean, you're still married, so things turned out good.
Yes. 10 plus years later. Yeah, so I think that when I got married in my era, and I'm saying my era, and it was 10 years ago, right? But Haitians, generally speaking, I don't want to speak for every Haitian, so the Haitians are texting me or, I'm trending on Twitter for something, right? But what I would say, though, is that generally speaking, if you grew up Haitian, particularly in the church community, and after you graduate college, and then you had a girlfriend, then it's like, hey, what's next, right? And I was a part of that era, and I think that it was the best thing that could have happened to me because I see how I am now, and I'm 35-ish, right? And what I've realized as I look back at my 10-year journey, it's like, wow, like I've matured a lot. I was really focused, and I got a master's degree. I had really powerful jobs throughout those 10 years. But I would say that it was because, for me specifically, so I'm not speaking on behalf of men, but it made me extremely focused. It made me very, organized, and that's why I've reached, a pretty decent level of success at my age. Thank God, but it's anchored through my wife.
Now, part of the reason that, I sort of caution a lot of people against getting married before 30 is because
I don't advocate for that.
No, I get it. No, you were like, no, this is a unique situation. No. So I think you do so much growing and changing in your 20s, right?
Sure.
Like who you are at 22 is severely different than who you are at 29, in my opinion,
Absolutely.
Right? And in your 30s and 40s, I think that's less of a drastic change. Like who you are at 40 is pretty similar to who you might be at 46. You know what I mean? Like, yes, changes happen. Yes, you grow and you learn. But I think your 20s is really when you sort of morph into adulthood and all the changes happen. I think a lot of marriages don't survive those sort of big drastic changes, especially in like personality and who you want to be and what you want to do. So how did you guys get through that process? And I'm assuming, being that you became an entrepreneur, sort of left a corporate structure, and, a lot of big changes were occurring during that time. Like, how did you handle that? Like, and did it cause any issues? And, how did you guys work through all this?
We have the perfect marriage.
Said no one ever.
If she's listening, she's like, yeah, right? No, truth be told, I don't know how she dealt with it, right? Because, I'm someone, I got married at 25, right? And I'm 35 now. And the Jeff at 25 was a completely different Jeff at 35. Oh my God. Even when I just look at how I look, how I dress, like the things that, like all of the expensive stuff that I was wearing at 25, I was like, wait, what? Prada sneakers? Really? You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's what you spend your money on?
Yeah. Like, what was my salary back then? Even the car that I drove, I was like, I was driving a fancy car and I couldn't even afford it. Right. So in that, there was definitely this elevation of self throughout that journey. And also, I became an entrepreneur 5 years ago, right? We have 2 children. I got married learning how to be a new husband and a father at the same time, right? So there was so many different, changes within myself that I had to really understand. And it was really challenging, right? But one thing that I would say as to how we stayed together throughout that time is because we never lost respect for each other, right? So there was always a high level of respect, right? So she respected me and I respected her at the most supreme level. And, and like we're deep rooted in our faith. So we would go to church, we would pray together. And also too, like we, had marriage counselors, right? We had advisors, right?
Right. Had a village.
Yeah. We had a village, right? So, and we have a village plural, right? So it's still going on. And, that's how we were able to figure it out. And then, we're still figuring it out. She cursed my ass out yesterday, and I was like, you know what? It is what it is, right? So yeah, I mean, so I don't know what the right template is, but we're figuring it out.
How has children changed the way that you guys interact, both as parents and with each other? I think it can fully change the dynamic of the relationship. It goes from it's like all about us to now these people's entire worlds depend upon us, and sort of our relationship can become secondary. So did children change that? And if so, like, how did you guys keep the focus on you and like the importance of your marriage first, if you view it as being first, before the children?
In a relationship, it does get challenging, especially with your first child, right? Everything is an exaggeration. So it's like, the first birthday party is a big thing. And, the first day of school is a big thing. And then, the first words. And then, if the child starts stuttering and then you're like, oh my God, like, why isn't my child not, speaking at the rate of someone else's child? And then when the child is reading and all of that stuff, but your child is not reading and you're like, oh my God, like, is my child, special needs baby? Like, what's going on? Right. So meaning that everything is an exaggeration. With that being said, it's like, how do you now make your relationship priority when your emotions is geared towards this milestone that your child is having, right? So when I was in graduate school, we were having a newborn, with our second child, right? So I still got to submit those papers. Right. And I still have to work and I still have to do all those things. So, in which being a black man, and at the time I worked in healthcare, I was in the marketing and branding department. So it's like, I'm the only black guy there, right? So how do you navigate all of those spaces while then, you want to share that with your spouse? But then, your spouse, first time mom, and it's like, oh my God, like everything is about
she has
their
her
child,
own
right?
set of emotions.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And she has her own set of emotions, etc. It is really a big challenge, keeping the relationship first when, you have mouths that's depending on you. And then, again, everything is an exaggeration. So it's like, how do you manage the emotions of your marriage or your relationship while ensuring that you're still taking care of your children, right? So, in that most supreme way. So it's just this balance that a lot of people don't understand how to do, and then myself included, because I'm still trying to figure that joint out.
Right. Now, what would you say that Black men, and yes, I am asking you to speak for Black men, or specifically, the ones that you talk to here at the Gentleman's Factory.
Okay.
What would you say is the thing that is most needed in their relationships with Black women? Like, what do men need from us?
What I would say is that Black men do not feel supported, right? Let me explain. In a relationship, it is a tug of war of the trauma that Black men and Black women have, right? And what I mean is that society, and I'm speaking for Black men here, right? Not Black women, but Black women get it double, right? But I'm just speaking on behalf of Black men, some Black men, right? So society, right, you constantly have to prove yourself. You feel as though, even though you went to the top schools, you're just still not good enough as Bob, right? And Bob is average as hell, right? And you're just surrounded by white mediocrity oftentimes, right? And, you're just trying to move up these spaces. And then you're, losing your identity in the process because you're just trying to fit in. And you never feel as though you are good enough, right? So oftentimes Black men in very high spaces, right, have a lot of deep-rooted insecurities internally because they're constantly going in the back of their head saying, do I really need to be here? Or do I belong here, right? It's this subconscious... The
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So, and then obviously this is not for everyone, but there is a cluster of the population. So in that, now, when we are with our Black woman, there's just so many layers of the experience. And it all starts with, race and, racism and all of that stuff. But to answer your question more specifically... with what men need from women, I'd say it's the emotional support, because everything else, you can get. I mean, like, if it's the physical, that wears out, right? But I think it's the emotional support. But the problem with men, though, is a lot of men don't allow for their spouses to reach them there. To see them in that space fully. Exactly, right? Because you're always trying to be superhero, right?
I'm the man. I'm the strong one.
So I hold now, like, even in my relationship in the beginning, it was a challenge for me to talk to my wife about just things that I was going through my head, right? Because I knew with what I said in my head, like, it then becomes law, right? You know what I'm saying? So, for example, if I say, I was thinking about, starting a Gentleman's Factory clothing line. No, maybe not that. But then I was thinking about, doing just random brainstorm thinking. Right. And then I remember there was one time, and then she's going to kill me for saying this, so hopefully she don't ever hear this. I'm a visionary. And then I remember I was telling her something, and then she was like, damn, you always, you're all over the place. Right. And then when she said that, it then made me, one, feel some type of way. Right. But it was because I was opening up myself to her, like she was my whiteboard at a time, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a really good way to describe that.
So then when she hit me with the I'm all over the place, I'm like, yo, I gave you access to a space in my brain that no one has access to, right? And then because I gave you that access, and that access was violated against, right? Then you'll never get that.
Then it'd be access denied. Denied.
It would be access denied. So I think every man has this area of where they need that support, and they need that stimulation, and they need that, safety, particularly with their spouse. But oftentimes they just don't want to reveal themselves in that way because they're afraid. Because if they ever reveal it in that way of this vulnerability, and if, that doesn't go well, then they'll never open up ever again like that.
How do you, as a woman, like how do women, your advice to women, to create that safe space in order for a man to open up in the first place? So
what I would say is to understand your man, right? Understand what moves him, right? Because if I were to say something, so I'm someone who needs like intellectual stimulation and all of that stuff, right? Like I need a thought partner and all of that, right? There are some guys that's not where their dopamine rush is, right? You know what I'm saying? So you got to understand your man's love language. You got to understand what moves him, right? And then build from that, right? Because too, like, a lot of folks have trauma. Like I've been in therapy for 4 years, right? And I'm unpacking things that, that happened to me in 7th grade, right? I'm like, oh, snap. Oh, that's the reason why I feel that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So
the foundation and the building blocks.
Yeah,
it all starts there. Yeah.
So oftentimes we don't even know what our triggers are, right? You know what I'm saying? So with that, what I'm saying with women is that it's good to, just have a better understanding of your spouse, of your man. Learn him in the details. Like look at the details, right? You know what I'm saying? See what moves him, see what gets him excited, see where his insecurities are, and don't talk to him about it, but just observe, right? You know what I'm saying? And I also say this to men too, right? So with your woman, learn her, right? And if you think red bottoms is it, like maybe maybe her love language isn't gifts. You know what I'm saying? My wife, if I buy Deborah some red bottoms tonight, she'll be like, oh, thanks.
Thanks for wasting that money.
Yeah, for sure. You see, there's like one of the things that I did for Mother's Day. What was it, Mother's Day? There are these flowers that like last a year. Oh, right? Yeah. And then I went to the mall in Long Island, and I saw these beautiful flowers, and I guess it was a good week because I was because I had a little money in my pocket, right? Some unexpected money. So then I said, okay, like let me splurge a little bit. Right. I had bought her a gift, but then I said, oh, but let me get her something else. So then I bought these flowers, right? And these flowers cost like $500, right? You know what I mean? And then it was these big flowers.
But because they last a year, it's like what you would have spent on getting flowers. Anyway, I get the thought process.
All of that, right? Right. And then I was like, yo, you know what? I want to show homegirl that I ain't know she do. You know what I'm saying? Let me, And then I got her the flowers, and she was really appreciative. And she was like, oh, thanks. And she was like, oh my God, like these are really expensive, right? And I was like, yeah, it is. She was like, yo, we got to pay the bill with that damn money. You know what I'm saying? Right? I was like, really? Right? So saying that to say that, that's not her love language. She loves quality time, and she wants, for me to be around and like to rub her feet and shit. Yeah. Like that, right?
At the end of the day, like I do feel like both men and women, all of us, right? All of us sometimes live in these cliches of what we think a relationship is supposed to be, what we think men are supposed to like, what we think women are supposed to like. And, and I think this is largely painted just by like the media and what's popular in TV. And it's like, oh, well, all women love flowers and, bags. And it's like, no. All men love sports and hanging out with their guy. And it's like, no. And so I think it's a very good point that you make about truly getting to know your person as who they are, not as the woman that you think they should be or might be, but truly like, who are they? What do they enjoy? Like, what makes them tick? And like knowing those special details goes such a long way to both men and women when it's just like, hey, that one time we were out, I noticed that you ordered, the number 14 on the Thai menu on our second date. And so you really liked it. So that's what I got for you again, and that's like a $15 little thought, but like it goes such a long way. Whereas if you show up with $500 worth of flowers, if I'm not into that, it's just like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks
Yeah. That's
for
what it is.
wasting that.
And yeah. Only wish I could get my damn $500 back. You know what I mean?
So you are married to a black woman.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah. No. Oh, I should have led with that.
Did you specifically choose to marry a black woman, or it just sort of happened that way?
I chose to marry not only a black woman, but a Haitian woman.
Right.
Right. You know, because especially with where I was at the time of my life, in young and immature, you know, I think that she understood me because, you know, she's Haitian, Caribbean. I had to marry a black woman. I mean, that was just unquestionable. Like, that's because
your parents said so, or because you wanted to?
Well, because of me, right? I mean, because I just love black women, right? And I also,
say that again. We need to hear that more often.
I just love black women.
Say it sexy. No, I'm kidding.
Yo, listen.
But I love hearing black men say that. You know, as a part of my daily conversations, it's often disheartening to me when I hear a black woman say to me, yeah, part of the reason I'm coming to you is because, like, I don't think there are many black men that want to be with black women. And like, I hear that all the time, like, oh, you know, I date white women, or I'm open to everybody. And it's really disappointing. It really is hurtful for a black woman to hear that. And it's also the part of the thing I want to point out is it's not, again, it's I think a myth, because I hear so many black men say that, you know? And so I always try to reassure them that, like, I don't know who you're dealing with, but like, that's not everybody, you know? And only 25% of black men marry interracially. I mean, it's still, it's a good chunk, but it's 75% are marrying black women.
No, absolutely. And I think that, so one of the reasons why I'm very big on black love, it's from an economic lens, right? You know, it's like, where are we, you know, how are we looking to, you know, build generational wealth, right? You know, and I think that that's important. And then I also, you know, Gentleman's Factory have hundreds of members, and by this time next year, we'll probably be at like thousands of members.
Congratulations.
You know? So thank you. So our goal next year is to have about 5,000 members at this time next year, for which, you know, we have a good understanding of, if we take, you know, our 300 plus members now as the sample, there's a lot that love and date and marry black women, right? You know, what I've realized with men, when a guy is ready, he's ready, right?
It's like the taxi light thing.
Yeah.
So when his light's on, it's whoever's ready next is jumping in that cab.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Because they feel as though that they've reached a place where they are financially astute, etc. I, got married at 25. I wasn't, like making what I'm now, and I didn't own a company, etc. So I come from the philosophy of, you guys can build together. I come from that world. But with the guys, the ones that I know who's a part of Gentleman's Factory and just my friends, they feel as though once they're stable financially, particularly financially, not even emotionally, forget the emotion part, but financially, because black men oftentimes, address their trauma by building wealth, right? So we associate wealth with like healing and validation.
I've made it. I'm no longer the person that is dealing with that trauma because now I have the money, but then they realize no, it doesn't go away. You just have more money.
Exactly. Money just makes you more of what you already are. But money is a validator for many of us, right? So we now say, okay, we have money. Now I'm stable. That's
the top thing that I hear from men when I ask them maybe why something didn't work out in the past or why they're ready now versus then, is they point to finances as the biggest sort of indicator of readiness. Well, I'm at a good place in my career now. I'm making good money. I own my home. Now I'm ready, And to point to what you said before, what I always ask is, are you emotionally ready? Have you been to therapy? Have you addressed some of the issues that affected your past relationships? You know, are you over what happened in your past relationships? Do you understand how you're different now? And that is the part that I find is sometimes lacking, that awareness of who was I back then that could have been better, that maybe could have been ready despite not being financially ready. Like, could I have been? But I do love when I talk to guys that are just like, oh yeah, I'm in therapy. Let me tell you what we're talking about. Like, that makes me smile when I hear that they are doing that work. Like, they got the money, great, but now they're actually putting in that work into like truly understanding themselves. And because you're not going to get a good partner if you don't. Let's just put that out there. Like, if you don't understand who you are, that is step one. That is the base. That is the core. Get to the core of you, the good and the bad. You know, like when you're in these streets, be like, hey, here's what's great about me. And I know this because I've done the work. Here's what I need to work on. Also know that because I've done the work. I have a client. She was supposed to be starting with me in July. And then she was like, hey, can we postpone? Because I'm in therapy right now and we're just doing some really intensive work. And I think it would be better if I got through this and really understood some things about myself. And I'm like, oh my God, I love it. Yes, please go to therapy and then come back. Like, but I love that was the thought process of like, hey, let me really do the work first before I go, you know, trying to find somebody before that part of me has fully been processed.
And then that's why spaces like Gentleman's Factory exist, right?
Yeah.
Because where do men go for that? You know, women have a lot more option when it comes to these things, and you know, like a bit more comfortable talking about it, right? And men, you know, that's the journey and the battle that I'm fighting, is just, you know, providing services for us to be comfortable to even talk about those things.
Yeah. If you think about women, just how we go through the world, how we went through the world pre-COVID, like you're sort of constantly talking about your feelings and you're constantly touching people. Like you see your girlfriend and it's like, hey girl, and there's a big hug. You go see your parents and it's like, oh, hey, and there's a hug. You know what I'm saying? And you're talking to your girlfriend on the phone and it's just like, girl, I'm having the worst day because this happened and that happened. And there's just sort of a natural outlet, I think, for women that happens throughout just their day and their life. And I don't think it's that way for men. I think like male friendships are very different. Like sometimes I think male friendships are quite surface level. You know, it's very much like, yeah, we're watching the game together or we're doing, you know, insert any activity together. But I don't think that a lot of the times beyond the activity or thing that there's a lot of like emotions that are being talked about. I don't think there's a lot of just exchange of like, man, here's what I'm going through. Like, this is rough. And so you're right. Like a space like this does need to exist for exactly that reason. Like men need an outlet, a safe one.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because, you know, we've been taught to not speak about our emotions and we've been taught to just like bottle everything in. And I see it changing, right? So with the Gentleman's Factory, yes, and even in like group chats, right? You know, like guys, you know, in my group chats now, you know, even outside of Gentleman's Factory, you know, like my married friends, like we have like, you know, we have our own like group chats where we're just talking about things that, you know, like if anyone were to steal my phone, they'll be like, really, Jeff? Really, Jeff? Really, Jeff? And then I'm going to say, yes, really. Okay. Right. I need it as a damn outlet, you know? So yeah, I mean, but it is important though that, you know, men have spaces, men and women, but particularly men have spaces to just be.
How can people join if they want to join the Gentleman's Factory? How does that happen?
Yeah, for sure. So you can just go on our website, gentlemansfactory.com, you know, fill out a brief application. And for the physical space, you know, there's a in-person interview in a sense, but we're interviewing each other, right? So this is not like, you know, like you don't got to come wearing a suit or anything like that, right? No, it's just that we would just want you to understand what Gentleman's Factory, what our core values are, what we're looking to do. And then similarly, you know, you interview us as we have a conversation with you, right, to make sure that it's the right fit. And on the digital level, you know, it's an open house where, you know, you meet with either myself or one of the leaders of the team, and we give you an overview of where it is that we're going. And then, you ask us questions, we ask you questions, and, we'll build from there. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is this free or do people have to pay?
No, so it is a paid membership,
Okay.
right? Because we need skin in the game, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then the value is crazy. On the digital side, there's 4 events per week, right? There's an app that's in an app store where you build a profile. It's like LinkedIn style. We have one-on-one coaching. We have different digital events. And now that the world opened up, we have members in 18 states and in 4 countries.
Nice.
So as the membership grows in different parts of the country, before we raise money for a physical space there, we'll have like quarterly in-person events there at a Black-owned facility, right?
I love that.
So we're expanding, and we're growing our reach, and we're looking to have thousands of members by this time next year.
I love it. Well, Jeff, tell your friends to call my friends so we can be friends, create some Black love, some Black marriage, bring people together, make it happen.
Yes, let's do it.
So where can people reach you and the Gentleman's Factory?
So on Instagram, it's at Gentleman's Factory, and then we spell gentlemen's. It's MENS, right? Men's Factory. And you can, reach out to me. My Instagram is Mr. Community, MR Community NYC. And you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Jeff Lindor, JEFF LINDOR. And that's it.
Love it. Thank you so much, Jeff. Yes. I so enjoyed this, and I am glad that you were my first in-person back. We back.
Yes.
And please reach out to me at Tanisha Wood on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and let me know what you think of today's show. And until next time, wish me love. Hello again, my lovely listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of DRL. If you like the show, be sure to go on iTunes and leave a rating and also write a review. And don't forget to share with your friends and tell them all about DRL. Thank you so much for supporting.